Good evening. I'm Shamar Hill, and I'm honored to be moderating tonight's conversation. For over a decade, something has broken in American public life. Friendships have ended, congregations have split, college campuses have erupted. The relationship between Black and Jewish communities, a relationship that was already strained, already complicated, has in many places simply disappeared. This matters beyond the communities themselves. When Black and Jewish Americans can't find common ground, when the communities that built the civil rights movement can't talk to each other, we surrender the future to people who have no interest in justice for anyone. Many of you came here tonight carrying something heavy. Some of you have lost family members in Israel. Some of you are watching Gaza and feel helpless. Some of you have been called anti-Semitic for criticizing Israel policy. Some of you have been called anti-Black for centering Jewish safety. Some of you are exhausted by being asked to choose sides when you contain both sides within yourselves. I understand. I'm Black and Jewish. I've heard Jews speak about Black people in ways that have made me ashamed. I've heard Black people speak about Jews in ways that broke my heart. I was a boy during the Crown Heights riots, and I remember feeling helpless and scared. I've spent my adult life asking, how do we do better than this? Tonight won't answer that question completely, but it's a start. And I'm honored and excited to be joined by these 5 brilliant people. And I know that we'll get to something real and raw and vulnerable. And we have about an hour or so to do it. So let's get to it. This is to all of you. What does the grand alliance between Black and Jewish communities mean to each of you personally? Did you grow up with an awareness of this shared history? As you answer this question, think about your background and what you do and how it might be connected to this awareness. Who'd like to start? What the hell? Abby's making it happen.
Sister, do you want to go first?
No, you can.
Oh, goddamn! I'm just trying to not cry. I just feel the emotions, you know. We need each other. It's hard. I see you back there, brother. I love you, brother. Yeah. You know, and we need each other. And I was talking to the rabbi that I have so much more appreciation for our ancestors now. These have these bad days. But we have bad days because they're tearing down things. But our ancestors' backs were against the wall in 1909. No Blacks, no Jews, no dogs allowed. 1909. And some Black folks and some Jews sat down and said, it's not acceptable. And they said, we're going to make America be a real thing. Never been done. Two groups that nobody wanted. Making a country better. Never happened before. And they created something called the NAACP. National Association for Advancement of Colored People, because white folks didn't see Blacks or Jews as white. None of us were white. And we held on to each other and changed everything. Had nothing. Praying hands and marching feet. Changed it all. I don't know how they did it. I just know we need each other. Black people need friends. More friends, fewer enemies. Jewish people need more friends and fewer enemies. Black Jews need both sides to stop fighting. So don't make me go first. I'm still getting used to it.
I'm not going next.
Well, I want to answer the question in two ways. On one level, I want to say that you asked, is it a part of my history? It's a part of my history. On my mom's side, she's an Ashkenazi Jew. My grandfather was deeply involved in the civil rights movement, marching alongside Dr. King. My great-grandfather was a labor leader in the Communist Party. He was indicted under the Smith Act in the late 40s. And so I always understood that my Ashkenazi Jewish lineage was very much intertwined in the Black struggle for equality. But I do want to say that in 2025, the shorthand of saying Black and Jewish alliance in some ways feels like it has a bit of erasure in it because it relies on an Ashkenormative way of looking at Jews, which is to say that Jews are white. And my father comes from a long line of Yemeni Jews. My father was born in Israel, and so I would go to Israel with him growing up, and I would see tons of Ethiopian Jews, Yemenite Jews, Libyan Jews, Moroccan Jews. And so the paradigm that there was something different between Jewish and Black was not necessarily something that I ever believed. It wasn't the world that I lived in. It wasn't the paradigm that I was looking at the world through. And so as we move forward and as we build alliances now in this moment where it feels like there's greater fracture than ever, I wonder what language we could use to make it clear to people how incredibly diverse the Jewish community is. And I don't know if that starts by saying the Black and Ashkenazi Jewish alliance in the 30s and 40s, right? Not to be divisive, but as a way of saying it's really important for people to understand that half of our diaspora would be considered people of color in this country. They just didn't have the resources to come here. And so those are my thoughts about it. And in the present moment, like Van, that alliance that I heard about from my grandfather doesn't feel like it's something that exists in the way that we want it to right now. And we got to work really hard to find a way to build bridges again.
Yeah. Van, you used the words, you said, we need each other. And one of the things that came to mind, we just celebrated MLK weekend, and Martin Luther King Jr., in one of his interviews, when he was asked how he handles feelings of inadequacy, he used a religious expression. He spoke about a feeling of cosmic companionship, when you feel that you are not alone. And I believe he was speaking about God, but as you were speaking, I got the chills, and I suddenly understood the term cosmic companionship differently, about what it means to say we are together on a difficult road, and we are going to exercise and be committed to cosmic companionship. I wasn't born in this country. I was born in Argentina, grew up in South America, moved here when I was 12. My family comes from Syria, Morocco, and Spain. I married into a family from Egypt and from Iraq and Syria. So for me, the Black-Jewish alliance was something that I learned when I became an American Jew, when I learned what it means to be an American Jew. And one of the things that I saw in synagogues and in day schools and in federations was an immense pride, very earnest, generous pride in saying, not only has America been exceptional to Jews, American Jewish exceptionalism, but it allowed us to make it better. It allowed us to partner with other communities, and it allowed us to kind of extend that American dream in a broader way. Now, maturing, right, not just coming here, has been to learn, as Rabbi Ingberg mentioned, what are the risks of that, right? I'll mention one risk. I was with a group of Black Christians and Black Jews and white Jews, and some of us brown Jews. And we were in the South and visiting many museums, and we were in Selma. And in some of the museums, some of my friends were just looking for the picture of Heschel marching. And that was like their focus. And I think that that has been one of, I want to name, we're going to talk about difficult things, right? So one of the risks and one of the challenges that we've had in the Jewish community has been romanticizing this alliance and a little bit of navel-gazing, treating it as a Jewish story, right? And that's part of what I think we need to address right now. Another risk, by the way, would be to remove the Jews completely and do the opposite, because I think we need to be really proud of the overrepresentation of Jews in the civil rights movement and what it tells us about not just the past and our values, but most importantly, the responsibility that we have right now. So I'm really excited to be part of this conversation. I'm grateful, Shamar, that you really organized it and you galvanized us. And part of it is because, like many of us here, I think the alliance has suffered and has either broken or maybe it wasn't there when we thought it was there a few decades ago. And we need to make sure that we commit ourselves, not to avoid the difficult conversations, to have them and to figure out what can we do moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you, Mijal. Abby, Janille?
I'm, I guess, the Ashka normative voice here.
Welcome.
Thank you. And I do want to start with Van's emotion because I feel like you gave permission that if you hadn't, I wouldn't have allowed myself, which is just this incredible brokenheartedness of this moment. And I said it to him back in the green room that he's been a lifeline for me. Ari'el has too in a different world, but I feel like I shouldn't have to say that this, I consider you not just an important journalist and voice, public voice, but a leader for our people right now. And I can count them on one hand. And I'm afraid, and there's risk in saying that too, because I know, and I feel like when we were having dinner, there's also the violin of thank you, poor us, but you know, has been a sense since October 7th of not seeing Jewish victimization actually counting in a way that has shocked me. And so it gets back to what I was raised with, which was, you know, maybe you want to put it on a needlepoint pillow, but that was my entire childhood Jewish upbringing, was our responsibility. And very often towards the Black community, and not in any kind of patronizing way, it's that this is your legacy. And Passover and the Seder message every year was that story, not just Heschel, but a sense of Deuteronomy and the fact that those are our king's words. I've been to the mountaintop. I may not get there with you, but I've seen the promised land, is that we are supposed to activate that promised land. We have work to do. That's how I was raised. It wasn't about like, go Jews. Jews are center of everything. It was Jewish responsibility and obligation. And so there is a sense, I know we'll get to it, of a feeling that we were in this together for whoever kind of needed it at the time that they needed. The Rosenwald schools were an incredible story that is real. 5,000 or more schools built not just by a philanthropic Jew, but the hands and the ingenuity of Black people. There were so many instances of this that it wasn't just Heschel marching with King in my house. And then the final prism, which we talked about, is that my mom co-founded Ms. Magazine. And so there was a lot of reckoning in my house about where the feminist movement had not shown up enough and included Black voices and Black editors and Black writers soon enough. So just that consciousness is kind of in my DNA, and it's part of, I think, where I'm sort of woken up to a certain sense of it being a little bit naive in terms of how far it could take us now.
Well, I want to throw something out as a layer because it's already in the air. Dr. Martin Luther King is already in the air, which makes sense considering we're a few days removed from Martin Luther King Day and about a week removed from his actual birthday. And he said, and I believe we probably all know this quote, that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And I feel like everyone who's responded so far is getting at that and speaking to my next questions. That's why I wanted to put it out there. Is what
Wait, did Sister go yet?
Yeah. We're going to make sure she goes. What made that shared vision of justice so powerful, Janille? We're starting with you. And is it harder to achieve now?
That's crazy. Now I have a new question, okay?
Yeah.
Let me, I think first I want to say that I'm a Caribbean American Black woman. And the history that so many of you are speaking to and was new to me. I work in dialogue spaces, bridging gaps between isolated, fractured communities. And recently I've been doing a lot of work in Black and Jewish spaces. And when I first entered the work, I was like, how is it Black and Jewish? And it was Black Christians and white Jews mostly. And when I started doing the work, I began to see the diversity within the Jewish community, which was shocking to me as you talk about the normative white adjacent way that Jews are seen. And I think it presents a different issue or paradigm for how bridging work is to happen. It's when we're in spaces, when we're exposed to people, exposed to the other and other stories, that we can begin to shift our narratives of what it means to be aligned or allied with or support others. Because we come into our situations, we come into conversations with all of our preconceived notions that are hard to lay down. Honestly, before I was immersed in the work in the way that I never thought about Jewish people, honestly. And most Jews were aligned with whiteness to me. So I even further didn't think. And to be exposed to the diversity has shifted what it means to partner with and also to start a new narrative, because there can be so much leaning on the history and hope or without activity now. I think you spoke to that as well. We need to start a new narrative, a new alliance, and there needs to be openness and honesty about those stereotypes, how I'm coming into the room, what I can lay down versus what you can lay down. And if those conversations, those honest conversations about what we're bringing into the room don't happen, then it's kind of a non-starter. I'm not sure if I fully answered your question, but.
No, you did, and I just kind of layered it with the idea of is this vision that they had during the civil rights harder to achieve now?
Yes. There's such a lack of nuance today. Everything is black and white, and we're in cancel culture. So it's hard to present any different idea because no one wants to hear it, because it's hard. It's hard to hear other people's stories. You know, as I was preparing for this, I started thinking about what has made it hard for Black people to think about the other. And I think to an extent, there's like trauma hoarding in all of our communities. We think that there's not enough pain or joy or allyship to go around. It's me with my people and you with your people. And we have to be focused on our own community, because otherwise nothing's going to happen. So when somebody crosses over and says, hey, let's reach out and help them, they seem like a sellout. It seems like your eyes are not focused on what you need to be focused on. And if we shifted our perspective to value the life of the other, just one person, right? One conversation at a time, one story at a time, it begins to create possibilities for the communities that that person represents. But it's really hard to do that. And it's hard to stay in that difficult place of listening to stories and trusting that because you have hurt or because you have trauma, it doesn't take away from my own. But that happens, I think.
Anyone else want to respond to this question and this idea of, is it harder to achieve now, and if so, why?
It is, and I think what the sister was saying is important because we're in different algorithmic universes. It's not just that people are meaner and dumber. though one can make the case. It's, the smarter the phone, the dumber the person. The problem that we have is black people are hurting. And your algorithm is not showing you that anymore. 5 years ago, your algorithm would have shown you Black Lives Matter and everything happening in our community, and you would have been marching in a pandemic trying to get something done about it. You haven't seen anything about black people in your algorithm for 2 years. And so the fact that we are in a complete tailspin, I've never seen the black community this hurt. We have lost so many jobs in this past year. Unemployment is flat, but black unemployment is now up 3 points, which means all of those DOGE cuts that were directed at the public sector, the backbone of the black community is what? College-educated black women who work in the public sector. Think about all the amazing black women you know. They're not running tech companies. They are in the public sector doing amazing work. They were decimated. Grants taken away. 300,000 black women. Those are the super voters. Those are the homeowners. Those are the churchgoers. The backbone of our community devastated by these DOGE cuts. That's not in your algorithm. I can walk through all of the devastation. The Jewish community turns against DEI, says DEI is the source of all of our pain, it's anti-Semitic, etc. And nobody talked to us about what that meant for our economic opportunities. So then the DEI collapses, and you have another wave of people who used to get $300,000 a year who are now in foreclosure because all those jobs went away. All the post-George Floyd grants went away. All the post-George Floyd foundations and funds went away. And we are devastated. And nobody seems to care. But it's not in your algorithm. Meanwhile, your pain and suffering is not in our algorithm. The fact that Jewish people can't go to soccer matches in Europe without getting chased down the street by thugs and ruffians, that's not in my algorithm. When somebody gets shot down for being Jewish or burned alive for being Jewish, it's not in my algorithm. If it is, it's there for 1 second. When those Bebas babies were murdered by Hamas, for 2 days I couldn't get a response from anybody in the Jewish world. I know what was going on. And somebody finally texted me back, can't talk now, bye bass baby. I said, what the fuck is a bye bass baby? And I had to Google it. I said, oh my God, Hamas murdered two children. It wasn't in my algorithm. And so please understand that black people are hurting. And when you come to us and say, well, why haven't you spoken out? Why haven't you done this? Why haven't you done that? We think, well, fuck, you haven't spoken out either. And we're going through serious hell. And it used to be not allowed to be a bullhorn racist like J.D. Vance. You don't have to be ashamed to be white anymore. That wasn't allowed. Now it is. So they're going to take voting rights away from us this year in the Supreme Court. We are going through hell. And what we hear from our Jewish friends is, you're not doing enough to help me. You're not speaking out to help me. You don't care about me. I'm disappointed in you, black person. Your DEI hurt me. Your silence hurt me. And we're saying, how the hell are we in trouble? We're not in Hamas. This is a weird relationship. Both sides feel let down. Both sides feel abandoned. Both sides feel not seen. Both sides not getting our needs met. But it's not because we're all dumber and meaner. It's because these devices are not supportive of community. And that's why us actually talking to each other and holding each other and helping each other. And if I never see Jewish vulnerability, and it's never shown to me, and then somebody says, I'm Jewish and I'm hurting, you have to give me a second to catch up to that conversation. And so this is a part of what's going on.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone want to respond to that?
No, just in complete agreement, and I'm processing emotionally, Van, as you're speaking, and I'm wondering to myself, what pain do I see and which one do I not, and how much do I do trauma hoarding? That expression is so powerful. I'll just add a little bit that in addition to the different algorithms, I think so many of us have a new questions about the American experiment at this moment. Like I mentioned, I moved here when I was 12, and I was the kind of young immigrant who was obsessed with America, and still feel very, very, very lucky to have become a naturalized citizen. I'm very proud to be an American. But the mood in the last 15 years or so, right? The questions that we have about the promise of America, about its ability to move forward, I think that really affects all of us. And when we feel a sense of threat, right, that we don't know what the ground under our feet looks like and how much it's gonna shake up, that makes us have this like fight or flight instinct, and it makes us be less generous and less empathetic and less able to hold the pain of others. So I know for me, and I'm just speaking, not prescribing this, but just confessing honestly, but the number of times in the last 2 years that I have felt so vulnerable and so under attack, and also confused by my own sense, because we are still the luckiest Jews in history in terms of our safety. And when I compare my life to that of my great-great-grandparents, I'm like, they would not believe what I am living through. But there's something there when you have a dream or you have a sense of safety and it is removed or it is destabilized, that just throws you and makes you feel really, really, really anxious. So I'm naming that and I'm holding that. And I think it's important to acknowledge that. And that's going to have to be part of the work that we have to deal with.
Ari'el?
Well, I want to just poke a little bit, just to say sort of my general sense of how I feel the last 5 years played out between the Black community and the Jewish American community, which is that my sense is that a lot of Jewish Americans say when George Floyd happened, we were there marching on the streets. That's sort of the as evidenced by everybody shaking their heads and nodding along. And then what happened after is that post-October 7th, a lot of Jewish Americans felt, where was everyone else for and with us? I just want to name that because I feel like that's the real pain that is existing in a lot of Jewish American hearts right now. And, you're talking about the algorithm, and I'm just wondering, does what I say resonate with you, and is it not catching up to the present moment?
I'm going to tell you something. When y'all say that shit to us, it pisses us off in ways it's hard to describe. Let's have this conversation.
Yes.
I was there for you during George Floyd. Thank you.
What about the rest?
What did it cost you? When you posted something about George Floyd, what did it cost you? Even the police didn't defend that officer. It didn't cost you anything. Was it in conflict with your values? Jewish people haven't wanted to see Black people lynched for 100 years. What did it gain us? No legislation. The George Floyd Policing Act didn't pass. False promises for 6 months. Then all the grants taken back. And we've been paying the price with this anti-woke, anti-DEI backlash for 5 years. George Floyd wasn't the first Black person who was murdered by the police. He wasn't the first Black person who was murdered by the police on television. He wasn't the first Black person who was choked to death by the police on television. That was Eric Garner in 2014. Listen to me, I'm a friend. This is hard for you to hear, but it's insulting. For half an hour, you supported us on George Floyd. It didn't cost you anything. Nobody was mad at you for doing that. It was consistent with your values. And ultimately, it didn't help us. October 7th happens. I spoke at the March for Israel. I was the second speaker there. The next minute, Iranian bots wiped out my social media. I couldn't post for 3 months because of the bot attacks on all of my social media pages. For 3 months, if my business had been social media as opposed to CNN, I would have been wiped out. There was an adversary that did not want a single black person to raise their hand for the Jewish cause. And I was made to pay a price. And others noticed that. Did that happen to you when you posted for George Floyd? No, it didn't. Black people are anti-war. Black people didn't support the Vietnam War. Muhammad Ali, Dr. King, we didn't support that. As many black people who died in 9/11, we didn't support George W. Bush when he went into Iraq. 80% of white Americans supported George Bush going into Iraq. 85% of black Americans did not support George Bush going into Iraq. Black people don't support wars. So you're asking us to support something that goes against our values for 100 years. And so when you throw that in our face and say, I did so much for you and you weren't there for me, and you paid no price, none, and any of us who raise our hand pay a huge price, it's not fair. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have legitimate reason to have felt abandoned. I'm not saying that. The hate crimes against your community, the black community has been silent on. That's wrong. We were loud about Muslims being attacked. We were loud about Asians being attacked. Quiet when Jews are attacked. That's wrong. Hamas lying and calling themselves freedom fighters, and us not telling them to get that name out your mouth, you're freedom takers. You're not the ANC. ANC never raped anybody. Nelson Mandela never kidnapped anybody's grandmother. We've been silent about Hamas. That's wrong. You're hostages that were taken. We came here as hostages and said nothing. That's wrong. The fact that you have a homeland and people saying you shouldn't have one, and we know what it's like to not have a place. There are things that we have done that have been betrayals, that have been silence. But George Floyd is not the place to stand on that. And it is very, very difficult for us to have to hear every single time as if that was some great moment. Black people, I'm gonna say one last thing, I'll be quiet for the rest of this thing. I promise I will. I promise I will. This is important. Please understand. When you talk about police brutality to black people, you're talking about something very, very, you're on some difficult ground here. George Floyd is not the first black person murdered by the police. We had been marching for 10 years before George Floyd when nobody said a damn thing. For 10 years, Black Lives Matter didn't start under Trump, it started under Obama. And nobody said a damn thing. Rodney King was 1992. Dr. King, 1963, March on Washington. When will the Negro be satisfied? The Negro will never be satisfied as long as he is a victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We've been screaming about this for my entire life, and nobody said a damn thing. Then finally, a 9-minute perfect video is shown to everybody stuck in their houses, and we get 20 seconds of support, and nothing changes. And then that's held over us. And we've had nothing but backlash since George Floyd, nothing but anti-woke backlash, anti-DEI backlash, anti-black backlash since George Floyd. And so I understand it's an issue. I hear it every time. But if we're going to speak honestly, that is the last thing you should say to a black community suffering as much as we are and still suffering from police brutality.
Thank you, Van, and you must be reading my mind because you've connected so well to one of the questions I have here. And it was a conversation I was having with you, Abby, so I hope you can start this one off. in a conversation with you, you suggested that each of us ask ourselves, what are we not proud of in our own communities when it comes to the other? So in your case, what do you, you.
I'm going to start with shame. I'm good with that. When Shamar was asking some of the questions that we might ask, I realized, I remembered back, I was part of a Muslim Jewish group that lasted for a number of years. And there was a retreat that we had, and it was the imam who asked us, each of us, to say what we were not proud of our own community. And I feel like sometimes we're asking for what we need from the other community instead of actually what we wish that our own community would reckon with. I mean, I'm carrying so much from what Van said, but I would say that part of what post-October 7th I'm not proud of is that there is an untouchable conversation when it comes to Palestinian suffering in the Jewish community, when it somehow seemed that any disquiet about the way the war was being prosecuted was seen as betrayal. And I wasn't proud of those who were shutting down those questions in Jewish spaces where a lot of people had real questions, which didn't mean that you were abandoning your belief in Zionism or your sense of what it means to be a Jew post-October 7th. There was a kind of a sense of immediate disloyalty. And that's something I think has hurt us, not just our souls, but actually the moral conversation that needs to be had about any war should be having a moral conversation. But particularly here, there was a sense that it was absent because of what people were feeling about this abandonment.
Who'd like to go next with this question?
I think part of my answer is tied to what you said, Abby, and what you said, Van, is our inability to live with nuance and our inability to support others. Like I said earlier about like the trauma hoarding and like feeling like my pain is the only thing that matters. And it's been so hard to have these conversations. And even as someone who is continually doing bridging work, to stay open, to stay flexible, and to imagine that things can change or that there is hope. And I think one thing that has shifted how I felt and what I've seen change for the people that I support is staying in the tension, staying in conversation, building relationships with people who are different, who you have strong opinions about, and allowing their stories to inform your beliefs instead of the stories that you've been told for your whole life. It's allowing ourselves to rewrite what we believe. And I think that's hard, really, really hard to stay with that nuance and tension.
I'm thinking about the question, right? What are things that we maybe have done wrong or doing wrong? I'm going to take it from a different direction, actually. I think that especially if we look at the years before October 7th, I would argue that a much of the American Jewish ecosystem, which is made up of many different communities, that many of us had forgotten to have confidence in the particularism of our story. And that many of us had assumed that that some of the trappings and sufferings of Jewish history were something that belonged to our ancestors and not something that we needed to care about. So I think we, in many ways, abdicated what it means to be the children of Jewish history. And we did not hold on to the lessons of holding on to the stories of those who came before us. So right now, and I'm speaking from a very Jewish point of view about what our communities did wrong, I think many of us are looking around and are asking, how many of us American Jews know who we are? How many of us understand why it is that we have Jews who come from Poland and Russia and Yemen and Iraq, and we might speak different languages and believe or not believe in the same God, and we still have a sense of Jewish peoplehood with each other? how many of us are able to articulate what it means that we are a covenantal people? There's just so much there that I think that, American Jewish exceptionalism, the great success that we experience in America, in many ways lured us into a place where we did not hold on to our particularism. And now we are struggling. We are struggling because of so many things. We feel abandoned, we feel besieged, and many of us are seeing attacks. And how many of us just do not know how to answer just for ourselves, right? Van, you mentioned the Bibas kids. I've had to explain to my non-Jewish friends why it is that I am mourning for people that I have never met. Why did I march for so many Shabbats, in the cold with my children, for hostages, right? And not all of us can articulate this. So I think part of the reckoning that we have had and part of the thinking that we have to do is both about building alliances, but also what does Jewish confidence look like? I'm not going to use Jewish pride, Jewish confidence. The understanding that we carry a chain of thousands of years and that we are meant to continue it and that we stand for something. So that to me is part of what I'm really thinking about that we have to take on right now.
Thank you, Mijal. Ari'el?
What am I most disappointed by?
What do you feel not proud of in your own community, in this case, your own community, towards its way of not working with the Black community?
What I feel most frustrated with is just the level of tribalism that I'm seeing online, which I want to think doesn't exist in the real world, but it does. And people who literally are looking at the world through a binary and unable to see the humanity of those who, in my mind, if you want to talk about the conflict in Israel, we're talking about cousins. We're talking about cousins. I started to call, we had a conversation about this. I started to call myself an Arab Jew. I'll get into this later, which pisses off a lot of people, so I apologize. But the reason why I did, but here with the confidence, the reason why I did is because I did research and I found that on my Yemeni side, the DNA that I have as a Yemeni Jew is more similar to the Yemeni Muslims than any other group. And so, the fact that we're unable to look at ourselves as brothers is the most heartbreaking thing of all. And that's what disappoints me, that we're sort of so stuck in our ways that we can't see the fact that we're like brothers fighting.
Thank you. This is a follow-up to you and your show. It was an amazing show.
So good.
Thank you.
And you've already laid it out for us about you navigating multiple identities. And what does it mean for you, Ari'el, to try to build an alliance when you're inside and in some ways outside both communities?
I love the question. So I'll start by saying a little bit of a personal story, which is that I said this before, but I'm the son of a Yemenite Israeli father and Ashkenazi American mother. And I went to a Jewish day school, and I was coming of age right around 9/11. And in those days, anyone who was brown, who was a terrorist. It didn't matter if you were Jewish or not, you were a terrorist. And so my mission, after my dad being called Osama bin Laden more than 3 times, was to run as far away from that community as I possibly could. And I reinvented myself in my adolescence and found a lot of acceptance and love within the Black American community, not because of the Grand Alliance, but because of my skin color, because I wasn't white. And I found that the Black community was incredibly inclusive. I had a best friend whose grandmother just took me in. She saw that I had a little bit of color. You're one of us. So I started to sort of, wait, where's my pound? No, I'm just kidding. Anyway, so I sort of lived in this fantasy and this sort of protecting myself by appropriating a half Black identity up to college. And in my 20s, it dawned on me that after having spent years hiding my Middle Eastern heritage, that I was in fact a Middle Eastern person, and I formed community with a lot of other Middle Eastern actors. And I started to see that my experience growing up was very similar to that of all of my Arab American friends. And so I started to call myself an Arab Jew, which felt unifying, it felt real, and it felt genetically supported. Of course, post October 7th, there was a twist. Mizrahi Jews, as they prefer to call themselves, got really pissed off by this young, naive American kid calling himself an Arab. I have a friend laughing. And then, of course, as I tried to advocate for Jewish diversity and talk about what it meant to be a Jew of color, it also felt like it was threatening or maybe dividing the Jewish American community at a time where we wanted to be more together. And so because of all of those stories, I have a show called Other. I don't fit in anywhere. But as it pertains to building alliances, nowadays we're in a world where we're sharing information 30 seconds, 60 seconds max. There's not a lot of nuance. It's really black and white. And I endeavored to write a very personal story that lasts 90 minutes. And what I find in making art and creating a play is that you don't force anybody, you just reveal. You reveal your life, you reveal your contradictions. And I have been moved to see how many people find themselves in my story when we are vulnerable. Because there's always something human at the core. No matter what our identity is, there's always something human at the core of our experience that connects us. And so my way of building bridges is not by solving the conflict of my identity, but by revealing it, by accepting it, and realizing that so many people don't fit into boxes, and giving people permission to be all of who they are, as opposed to so tightly relegated to whatever tribe they think they need to be a part of.
Thank you. Mijal, I'd love for you to follow up, especially because of your work and your scholarship in Jewish identity, specifically, Mizrahi, Sephardic, and Latina.
I'm a sociologist of Sephardic and Mizrahi Jews in the U.S., and I myself have Middle Eastern and Sephardic background and Hispanic background. I guess I'm going to take it from like a different angle almost. One of the things that I think a lot about, also when trying to think about the Black Jewish Alliance and different activism, is how so many of the ways that we have of looking at the world are actually very American. Okay? So when we talk, this whole conversation, we talk about the Black Jewish Alliance, it is based on a very specific American history. Yes. And it is based on an understanding of a race that is distinctly American. Okay, so we can talk about how blackness, how whiteness, how racism, how all of these things developed in America. Now, little secret for all of you who were born in this country, okay? Outside of America, we do things a little bit differently, okay? So as a secret, all right, Hispanics or Latinos, when we come here, everyone's like, "Ooh, people of color." I'm like, come to Argentina and Uruguay and Mexico. We have our own race there. You know what I mean? And then we come here and it's almost like there is, I love America. Okay, I said it already. But there is this American impulse to see everything through American categories. And part of the problem that I just want to lay on the table is as a Jewish woman, I'm not only an American Jew, I am part of a people. And I am bound to a people across time and space. And one of the biggest, it's not an elephant in the room, but Van, you were speaking before about the dynamics of activism in different places. One of the things that has been very painful for many of us in the Jewish community has been to see a lot of Black activists approach and work against anti-Black racism with an intersectional lens, in which they assume that the fight against anti-Black racism in America is the same as what they would describe as a pro-Palestinian, anti-Israeli activism in Israel. Sorry, that was a little bit long. The point I'm trying to say is that there has been a little bit of what I'm going to call a shallow assumption that what we see here works there. I will never forget, I had an interview with a prominent leader in the Black Lives Matter movement. This was maybe in 2018 or so. And we were talking, long, difficult conversation. And he started talking about Israel and the conflict and this and that. And at one point I said, oh, so tell me, how do you think about Mizrahi Jews? Okay, Mizrahi Jews is roughly 50% of the Jewish population in Israel. And he looks at me and he's like, what are Mizrahi Jews? I'm like, well, what about Jews like my family? We did not come from Europe. We came from Syria, from Egypt, whatever, indigenous to the region, suffered as many ways. And he was so confused. He did not understand me. He did not understand the possibility of my existence. And I'm like, how can you pretend, and I believe they had good intentions, right? That this conflict here is the same as the conflict there. And that there is an intersectional lens that you can apply very neatly, you will not be able to solve anything. You will just make things harder. So I think that the part of what I want to bring to this conversation in terms of thinking about the Black-Jewish Alliance is actually just reminding us, America is amazing, but it is one country, okay? And many of us come from peoples and families that have histories that go beyond America. And by the way, the American white Jewish experience is also complicated, okay? Like read Eric Goldstein's book, How American Jews Negotiated Whiteness That Sometimes Is Removed From Them, okay? It is not simple. There's white nationalists who have marched against Jews. So we need to really lean a little bit more into complexity, be a little bit more humble about what it is that we know, and more importantly, about what we don't know. And I pray that, God willing, there should be more peace for Israelis, for Palestinians. There should be less suffering for everybody involved. But none of us can do good activism if that activism is based on just a misinformed history or misinformed facts.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, I thought you wanted to respond. You were just... But this question is to you, Janille. In your inspiring bridge building work at Share America, I think it'll be really valuable for all of us to understand what you have observed that makes dialogue possible or impossible between the Black and Jewish communities.
I feel like it's a hard question based on all the information that is also coming out right now. That is not necessarily new to me, but nuanced, again, in different ways. One thing that has been transformative for me personally, I'll say first, is as I was preparing, I've co-facilitated a lot of the Black Jewish work that I've done with Rachel Arcus Goldberg, who's in the back. And to lead the cohorts that we led, it was important to have a Black person and a Jewish person. And as we prepared to do the work, we leaned on history and curriculum, but we chose to do the work with each other of unpacking our bias, our stereotypes, our history, our stories, and it was hard work. There was established trust after some times of meetings, and then there would still be times when I remember I asked Rachel a question one time about something historic. I was just like, can you tell me about this? And as she was talking about it, she was getting so fired up. She's like, and this, and I could tell, we were on the phone, but I could tell that she was feeling very defensive. And I had to say, girl, you're not on trial here. I just want to hear some of your story. I just want to learn. And I think that trust that we established with each other really was transformative for how we led other people into trust. And still, trust is very difficult. It's difficult to establish. It's difficult to bring what's right below the surface to the top. And that's what's made some of the work that we've done possible. The fact that we've been honest about the stereotypes that people are coming into the room with. We've said, okay, what stereotypes are you bringing in, and how does that play out in this room? And still, even after spending 12, 15 hours with the same people, there was still times when people got activated by what somebody else said, where they felt like they couldn't trust somebody because there's still so much history. And times when it was like, well, what should we do next then? And it's like, I can't tell you what to do. I can't tell you how to show up for this community. You have to partner with and stay in partnership with in order to bring about change. So I think being honest and vulnerable has worked. Not acknowledging what's present has not worked. And however hard it's been, acknowledgement goes a really long way. And to say, I see you, I hear you, I may not agree with you, but I can stay in the tension with you. I can choose to suspend my disbelief and stay in the story. Personal narrative has really worked. Hearing individual stories and not just stances has been transformative. I have a friend in Rachel because I've heard her story, and it's shifted my ideas about the others, and we've seen that happen in groups as we've leaned on personal narrative. But if you don't choose to be in relationship with the other, your ideas are never going to change. Even you guys who are sitting here today, and a shameless plug for staying after to engage in conversation with each other. But if you don't engage in conversation with each other or with the other, there's only so much activism, only so much change that you can make happen. You have to know somebody, and it needs to get in you in a deep way. But we got to step outside a little bit for that to happen.
Thank you. Van, I was thinking of all the amazing and difficult work you've done over the years that swims in this, trying to bridge these impossible divides. And really, it's how do you hold and how do we hold multiple truths while working towards alliance and bridge building?
Sometimes I don't. It's hard. I have an advantage over everybody. And my godmother is Dorothy Zellner, who was one of those Jewish kids who got on the bus in 1964 and went south. And her friends got killed. Freedom Summer. 2 Jewish kids that she had picked to go were killed. And a black kid was killed. That's my godmother. So I have an advantage over everybody because of her. And she took my black ass to the region. I went to the Holy Land with her as a Marxist, anti-Zionist Jew who took me to the West Bank, who took me to Gaza before Hamas came in and killed all of her friends, who took me to Masada, who took me to Yad Vashem, who took me to Tel Aviv, who took me to Jerusalem. And so when Hamas attacked, I knew who they were. There's some people commenting about October 7th. They didn't know Hamas from hummus 3 days before. They got their PhD from Instagram to start telling the world what to think. But to me, when you said Hamas, you may as well have said the Ku Klux Klan or the Aryan Nation. I knew what that group was because we went to Gaza before they took over. And all the peace activists in Gaza, all those mothers who were trying to bridge, they were all murdered. So I don't deserve a lot of credit. My godmother deserves a lot of credit. And so once you know something, it's hard to get fooled into giving lap dances to terrorists, as a lot of my friends were. So, look, I think for me, I've learned so much in the past 2 years since October 7th. And I've mainly learned that it's a lie that the Black-Jewish Alliance ever broke up. See, the reason that my Jewish friends are heartbroken is because they aren't thinking about 1950. Sometimes they're looking at that picture, that's true. They're thinking about the work that they've done in their own lives. They're thinking about, and by the way, if we're just going to be honest in the Black community, we don't think about Jewish people very much. It's hard for Jews to realize this. It's very difficult for you to understand. We think about Jewish people about as much as you think about the Cherokee. Right? I mean, you like them, but you're not spending much time worried about them. For us, most Black folk, I'm just be real honest, most Black folk just thought y'all were cool white people.
Some were cool white people.
No, I'm just saying, like, if you go to a public defender's office, almost all those white attorneys in there helping are Jewish. But we don't know that. So you think that if you say my name is Rachel Goldstein, that a 23-year-old Black person automatically knows that means you're Jewish. That's not true. If you say your name is Abraham Gold or Jared Silver, you think that means a Black person knows you're Jewish. The average Black person, you just Ray, you know, or my homeboy Jared. Like, so this is causing a lot of confusion because you're saying, I showed up for you, not in the 50s and 60s, and not just for George Floyd, but for 1,000 other things. And now you're not showing up for me. And your Black friend is sitting there thinking, you're Jewish? All Jewish people know their Black friends are Black. Almost no Black people know that our Jewish friends are Jewish. I'm going to say it again because when I say it, you can't believe it. I have my chief of staff, I've told her this 1,000 times. She still can't believe this. You know all your Black friends are Black. I guarantee you 85% of your Black friends do not know you're Jewish and don't know what it means. Black people have so many problems of our own. I was with Mark Morial, the great leader of the Urban League. He gave a beautiful speech, true story now, I just want you to understand, true story. He gave a great speech about Blacks and Jews and the unity and this, that, and the third and how we need to get back together and blah, blah, blah. And people were rocking and they were clapping and Black folk and they hallelujah and everything else. And when he got finished, I'm sitting behind these two sisters and one of the sisters leans over and says, "What is a Jew?" And the other just said, "I think it's like a rich white person." So please understand that all of your good deeds that were done were put in the cool white people box, not in the Jewish box. We just think it's a bunch of cool white people coming to these marches and who are showing up for our causes and who are opening up their homes for our candidates. We think it's cool white people. I have to tell my Black friends, there's not that many cool white people. It's mostly just Jews.
That's hilarious.
But I get a lot of credit for doing the things I do. If I didn't have my godmother, I wouldn't know. I know because somebody loved me and risked her life for me and would have given her life for me. And she took me there. And by the way, I'm the biggest Zionist she's ever met. She's the biggest anti-Zionist I've ever met. And I'm going to see her tomorrow. So we contain multitudes even in that relationship.
I'm curious if anyone wants to respond. Thank you, Van, so much for putting so much vulnerability and emotion in the room. It's really needed, especially to this idea of not knowing they're Jews. Does that speak to something about us as Jews? Are we missing something here about how we, maneuver through these
I
difficulties?
mean, I'll jump in. I know we're going to questions, or we.
No, we're good.
Oh, we're
Don't
good.
worry. I'm on that with Justin.
I first wanted to say, and I want to be careful how I say this. When you say the causes and the public defenders, it is hard to know. It's not that I think Jews should get an award for it, but there's been so much philanthropy that has been focused on the Black community, and the idea that that's just not known, is to me. It's part of all of this. It's not, again, that there should be a trophy for it, but the fact that that isn't understood.
It's not understood.
When-
Because y'all be in the cuts. Y'all be in the cuts.
Okay, I agree, but I wanted
Y'all,
to say.
in other words, you don't say it. You don't say I'm Jewish and here's the money. You just say I love you. Here's the money. And so we didn't know.
But sometimes it's also quiet. Like, I want to say, post George Floyd, I will speak for myself. It wasn't about a black box on Instagram. It was like, who can I support financially? Shut up and just support the people who are doing the work. And a lot of people were there. So I feel like it's just to say that we were just there and gone. I feel like my whole orientation was, how do we show up now with our mouths closed? Because I heard, like, we don't want to be teaching you. This is not a learning moment. And it's not every Jew. But I just will say, whether it was my Jewish community or Jewish organizations or even just my friends, it was like, there is something about showing up and being quiet and doing something that maybe isn't known, but we're supposed to be supporting the people doing the work. So the fact that that's gone also makes me think, like, again, we're not going to be like the rich Jews who say, do you understand how many checks we wrote? But it hasn't mattered that we were actually trying to do the right thing consistently, not just once, but year after year. And the DEI stuff, I'm not unraveling personally, but I take responsibility to the extent I can. I'm not, again, I'm just saying that this is part of where we are, which is a sense that we were there, we're gone, and it's fly by night, and we're posting things and we don't care. And the only other thing I would say is I would look at Charlottesville. I would look at Buffalo, the shooting in Buffalo. I would look at Pittsburgh. Whether or not we are Americans and it's different, we're being flattened as a people, both blacks and Jews, every day by bigots. And Charlottesville, people don't understand. Jews do not replace us. It's not that the Jews are going to replace us. It's that Jews are trying to replace us with black and brown people. That is what the great replacement insanity is. And it's why the Pittsburgh shooter came after that synagogue on Refugee Shabbat. It was about the idea that the Jews were shown. Again, I'm not saying we deserve a trophy for it. I'm just saying the orientation towards where we are joined is that we are the shared enemy of what I think is not necessarily the greater one, but one that we haven't talked enough about today, which is the fact that, like, you can now go on Tucker Carlson and talk about Jews being the problem. And if whether it's, Megyn Kelly or Candace Owens, this is like now, this is also normalized. And I just feel like when we don't actually focus on the fact that however much we are out trauma hoarding each other, at the end of the day, we're the ones together who can't afford to be apart. And I just hope we can figure that out.
Mijal, and thank you, Abby. Mijal, I think a lot about the Torah. And as a Torah scholar, I'm curious, what have you learned about alliance building that you think could help inform this work?
Well, the Torah is awesome. The Bible and spiritual and Jewish tradition. Before I answer that, I just want to maybe just add one thing. I want to make sure that as we're having this conversation and going into audience questions, that we're speaking about the Black experience, the Jewish experience. I want to just mention again how much I have learned from my Black Jewish friends and how important it is in all of, I'll speak as a Jewish communal leader, to make sure that we're lifting up different voices of diverse experiences and not just assuming that we have these two binaries. So I just want to emphasize that again. I think that's part of the not the solution, but the way forward as we move forward. So in terms of Jewish wisdom, I mean, there's so much there. We're literally right now reading the Torah portions of the Exodus, which has been one of the most influential stories of liberations for Jews, for Black Americans, for so many peoples around the world. But if it's okay, I'll just quote my late teacher, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, of blessed memory, of whom I had the privilege to learn when he was a professor at NYU. And I'll mention maybe just 3 lessons or 3 things that he taught that I'm holding that are not easy, but I want to hold. One of them, and this he would say specifically when he was speaking to Jews, he would say that, I'm going to misquote him, but listen to the spirit of what I'm saying. But he would say that that non-Jews respect Jews who are proud of their Judaism. Okay? He would say that it's really, really important when you're in community and in relationship to actually have a sense of who you are and have a sense of confidence and respect for your tradition and what you bring with you.
Amen.
So you're not coming in as a supplicant, you're coming in as somebody who's bringing a great tradition, excited to meet other friends and allies of other great traditions. But I think that's a mistake that I've thought about a lot. A lot of alliances broke down after October 7th. And many of those alliances, at least the ones that I saw, were ones in which very often Jews felt they had to give up their own stories in order to be in the room. So that's one thing that I think Jewish spiritual wisdom and the Torah asks from us, to not do that. I do not believe in alliance work if that alliance space asks you to deny your own story. Doesn't have to center it. But if you're asked to deny your own story, if I'm asked to deny the love and relationship and care that I have for my extended Jewish family, including in Israel, that is not an alliance space. Amen. That's one piece of spiritual wisdom that I took from Rabbi Sachs. The second thing Rabbi Sachs taught, I recently went back and reread so much of what he wrote on anti-Semitism. He was one of the earliest voices writing about it decades ago already. And he has something very powerful and sobering and hard. He wrote time and again, Jews will never solve anti-Semitism alone. We never have. We never did. Now, he didn't say this, but I was reading a couple of weeks ago the Exodus story. Moses, and Van, forgive me for juxtaposing this, when he spoke about Dorothy, your godmother, I had this moment, my mind just went to Moses and the daughter of Paro and their relationship and how that changed history. So sorry, my mind just went there. But there's something about the Exodus story in which you needed people from different communities actually working together. So Rabbi Sachs would say that, like, for Jews, we cannot solve anti-Semitism alone. We must be in community, not transactional alliances where we are pretending in order to get something out of it. But he wrote deeply about what it means to form friendships, to hear stories, and to ask yourself, how can I stand for you? How can you stand for me? How do we stand together against the forces of hate? And maybe the last thing I will say in terms of the Torah, I think the Torah was a protest, against Near Eastern culture. And it was a protest against the idea that might makes right. And it was a protest against the kind of empire in which the weak were downtrodden and weren't human. It's the greatest spiritual wisdom that demands a radical commitment to hope. Rabbi Sachs would teach that hope is not just an emotion, one day I'm hopeful, one day I'm not, right? Hope is a commitment. It's a decision to look at the world with honest eyes, with a sober view, and to say, despite it all and with it all, I am hopeful. And I will, as Michael Walzer has written about the story of the Exodus, I will find partners and walk hand in hand towards a promised land somewhere out there. So to me, this is so much of the core of the Torah. And it actually asks from all of us that even as we have these difficult conversations, and I am still thinking about so much that came up, I'm processing it, but we do not have the luxury of despair. And we have the obligation to hope.
Thank you. Ari'el, I want to bring it back to you, and it really is a wonderful thread because I feel that the arts enlivens us and gives us hope and joy, and you've sort of touched on this. But can you speak a little bit further about what role arts and culture can play in rebuilding this this alliance and this connection at this moment?
There's some art happening on their phone.
It can happen to any one of us. So don't laugh too hard. You be next.
Well, listen, some of the great art has actually happened in this grand alliance, right? Strange Fruit was written by a Jewish teacher, which became one of the most important songs about Black struggle. And it was because a Jewish American teacher witnessed the picture of a lynching. So that really had a big impact. But sort of moving into the present, I'm sort of curious to share with you all that the show that I've worked on, which you mentioned, which is about my life as a Yemenite Israeli Ashkenazi Jew with an anxiety disorder, is produced by an African American non-Jewish woman. And you cannot imagine how many conversations we had about that post October 7th. How many times people said, "Why are you choosing to produce this show?" And her answer was, "Because it's good." But what the underbelly of that was that when you tell a specific story, it has a way of cutting through the fat and allowing human beings to connect. Because at the end of the day, we are all human beings underneath the labels, the identities, the cultures that we're born into. And so that, was a really hopeful thing for me. Now it comes with challenges, right? Because when you don't see the world the same way, there are challenges. For example, we argued in the marketing. Do we say that he's Israeli or do we not? Do we hide it? Do we say that he's Jewish? Do we not? Is it a story about anxiety? Is it a story about somebody? So these kinds of conversations were really tense, uncomfortable, frustrating, but I believe that in that tension, something greater came out of it, which is art that's not siloed, that doesn't belong to one particular community, and people from different vantage points coming together to try to make the best piece possible. And so,
What did you decide?
What did I decide?
In terms of the
we it was really hard for me that in the first round for the Off-Broadway, we did not lead with my identity, and that felt like a dagger in my heart. It felt like a dagger to sort of feel on some level like I might get more people to buy seats by not saying that I'm Israeli. It felt like didn't feel good, so we may revisit that on its next round. But all of that said, I think that the arts right now, for example, just like Strange Fruit and just like this new collaboration, I think we need to challenge ourselves to get out of our echo chambers, out of our tribes, and actually make art with people with different lived experiences. I think that's a really important thing. It's something that I'm not seeing happening as much. And so the question I have is, why shouldn't she be the producer of a show of a young Israeli Ashkenazi American Jew with an anxiety disorder? So I really encourage people to sort of engage with art that doesn't reflect their lived experience, because at the end of it, especially at a time where most of the information we're getting, again, is 60 to 30-second clips, these are spaces where we can really find empathy and connection and can be changed.
This is very much connected to what's been a through line here, especially Van, thank you for talking about in terms of algorithms, and you mentioned the word silo, and I'm curious just to push it a little further. Van, how do you do this work towards a shared understanding with all that we've been talking about in terms of the algorithms and the siloing?
Well, I I went to the March for Israel, and that changed my life. I didn't want to go. I'm just going to be very honest. They said it was going to be the march against anti-Semitism to free the hostages and for Israel. I'm like, I'm not the kind of person that marches for countries. So like, come to the march for Mexico. I'm be like, or come to the march for America. I'm like, You know, like, you're asking a lot. I mean, you know, all of America. Like, but the hostages and the anti-Semitism, I said, okay. So I get on the plane. By the time I land, it's the March for Israel. Okay. That's not what I usually do. I go to bed, I wake up, my phone has hundreds of text messages from everybody I know. What are you doing? This is a war. Is this a lie? Is this a mistake? Are you actually going to go and do this? Because in my community, like, once it's a war, no. And I thought to myself, because, you know, I'm a high integrity person and a good person, maybe I can say I have COVID. And just get out of this whole situation. Like, I just don't want to get you sick. And but then every other black speaker dropped out. And so if I don't go, now you've got this issue of the Jewish community's under attack and they're rallying, which is very rare, and there's no black speakers. Well, that's 100 years. You can't recover from that. You cannot recover from that. So I said, okay, I have to go. My mouth was so dry. My armpits were itching. My underwear was wet. I was having a whole thing because my phone was just buzzing with people saying, do not go. What are you talking about? Like, this is literally insane. Why are you doing this? I had people on my staff that had literally apoplectic. I said, okay, so I gotta go. Why? Why were they apoplectic? Why were people telling you not to go? Because from their point of view, October 7th had happened and that was terrible. But Israel was now dropping bombs and was going to obliterate all these innocent people who were not the people who had done that. And from their point of view, Van Jones is now endorsing a war. And as a black person, to endorse a war is inconceivable. It would be like a Jewish person endorsing a lynching. It's just inconceivable. We don't do it. Find the war we've supported as a people since World War II. We are an anti-war community. And so it's just not acceptable. It's just insane. And so I said, I can't not go, so I've got to go. So I'm walking down the street to this thing, and my legs are wobbly, and I feel scared. And then I started to hear the singing. And it was songs I had never heard, and it was in a language I didn't speak. As I'm getting closer to the rally and I turn the corner, there's 250,000 Jews. Now, if you're not Jewish, it's rare to see like 20 Jews. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's not, you don't see that many Jews. It's 250,000 Jews. And they have these flags. And they're singing. And they're singing. And I said, I know this feeling. Hallelujah anyhow. Hallelujah anyhow. I didn't know the words, but that's what's interpreting in my mind. That you're not going to make us not be proud. You're not going to break us. We are here and we matter and you can't stop us. And it was so beautiful. And I was like, holy shit, I'm home. I've been in that church when a cop has shot one of ours and nobody cares but us. But we're singing and we're proud and you're not going to steal our joy. No matter what you do. And I was like, holy shit, this is amazing. This is important. Then, as I'm walking up to the place, Hirsch's mom comes over, Rachel. And she said, they have my boy. They have my boy. And I said, we're going to get him back. We're going to get him back. So I couldn't wait to get out there and try to say something. And I look back and I didn't say the right things and I made mistakes. But when I came off that stage, I was like, I know something that most people in the world don't know. That this is a grave injustice here. And there are people who are really hurting. And they don't seem like some super powerful group. They seem like us. When we've been mistreated, nobody gives a damn. Then my social media pages got hit. We've never seen anything like it. Like thousands a minute of bot attacks. And then I realized, oh, somebody doesn't want any black person in this fight. This is not normal. I piss people off and get my little fuck Van Jones, but it goes away. This didn't go away for 3 months. So I said, look, now y'all don't fuck with the wrong Negro. You're not going to bully me out of a fight. And of course, I stood with the Asians when they were getting jumped on after COVID. I stood with the Muslims when they were getting jumped on with the Muslim ban. I stood with everybody. So it's not unusual for me to stand up for folks, but this is the first time I stood up for folks and got this much blowback. Am I embarrassing myself? I'm sorry. She's like, get that snot. Okay, baby, I'm sorry. So I just want you guys to know, like, that was life-changing for me. And then I met people, like I said, I met Rachel's mom, I met other people. And the only good thing about bad times is when you meet all the good people. And so I had a lot to learn. I mean, I thought I knew about anti-Semitism, but I'm going to tell you right now, 10 years ago, you thought you knew about racism. But you know so much more now because of Black Lives Matter and all the things and blah, 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 blah. So now you understand anti-blackness. You know not to come and touch my hair and all kind of weird shit. So, but it took a while for y'all to learn that. Well, my community, this is all new. And so I have deep empathy for what you are going through. I'm a black person. I'm not a Jewish person. As you can tell, I'm proud as hell of my people, and I will defend us in front of you and anybody else. So please understand. But I also know what it means to have a friend. And to have a friend get jumped on. And where I grew up, and where she grew up, and where she grew up, and where he grew up, and where he grew up, and where she grew up, I don't even know where you grew up. I'm going to tell you what the rules were.
Don't leave me out.
and where she grew up, and where that brother right there grew up, and where she grew up. I'm gonna tell you what the rules
Gotta get
were.
all 12.
Hey, look, I'm gonna tell you what the rules were. 13, 14. Hey, listen, they don't know. And you two, sister, they don't know what the rules are. These are the rules. And I hope I don't offend nobody up in here, but I can't lie with a microphone. I'm gonna tell you right now. If you went out and your friend got jumped on, and you came home with clean clothes, what the hell were you doing? Oh, don't tell me your cousin got jumped on. Don't tell me so-and-so's child got jumped on, and you coming in here with clean clothes. No. When your friend gets jumped on, your friend doesn't get jumped on by themselves. You got to deal with me and my friend. And if your friend is wrong, we're going to be wrong together till we get home and work it out. Right or wrong? Right or wrong? That's code. That's code. And so for us to have one friend in 100 years, only one friend. There's no Black-Swedish alliance. There's no Black-Italian alliance. There's no Black-Japanese alliance. People say blacks and Jews have a lot of conflict. Well, blacks and Japanese have no conflict because they don't mess with black folk at all. Blacks and Jews have conflict because we actually mess with each other. We care about each other enough to have a conflict. So for us to have one friend, and one friend only for 100 years, and for y'all to get jumped on, don't bring up the George Floyd stuff. It pisses us off. But you're not wrong to feel let down. The George Floyd thing, don't do that. But you're not wrong to feel let down. It is a violation. It is against code. And I'm doing what I can with my platform to try to balance it. Anyway.
So, thank you, Van. We're running out of time.
I'm sorry.
No, thank you. And so, obviously, I'm skipping a few questions, but I wanted to end on a hopeful note, which, Van, you've already laid the foundation for. And so this is to all of you, is what gives you hope about this alliance? And that it is possible, and not only possible, that it's continuing and happening.
Well, we're doing it in real time right now, so that gives me hope. The people on this panel give me hope. And the fact that as long as we're still alive, we have to keep fighting for it. It's that simple to me.
I'll say, first of all, just reacting, Van, to what you shared before. I spoke at that march and I saw you backstage, and I had no idea the cost you were paying for any of this. And as you were speaking right now, I just felt really humbled because it really exemplified what you said. The cost that might remain invisible to some of us. And so whenever I see you using your platform and speaking up against anti-Semitism, it makes me as a Jew feel less lonely and more hopeful. So I know that you're not asking for gratitude, but I feel...
I'll take it.
Okay, fine. I feel I'm grateful to God that you're here and everybody who's working together. The other thing that gives me hope, I'll just say, inside the Jewish community, inside our institutions, I think the way that we speak about our own diversity has changed a lot in the last 10 years. We still have a lot of work to do, again, like a ton of work to do, but it's much better than 10 years ago, when there was really much less awareness about the diversity of the Jewish experience, and the responsibility that we have to uplift different voices and to think about not only combating racism in the streets, but thinking about when does it show up in our own spaces, and what do we have to do to live up to our own values within our institutions. So that again, none of this is like over the work that we have to do, but I think we have to point to the bright spots and the progress that we have done, and we have to continue pushing forward.
Thank you. Who'd like to go next?
Like Ari'el said, that what's happening now gives me hope. There are conversations like this happening across New York City. There are organizations that are pushing bridging work forward, not just between Black and Jewish people, but between strangers who are polarized. So that gives me hope. And that I'm seeing people's hearts break for the other. I think that's hopeful, that we can hear a story and find ourselves in someone else's story, and that can change our lives. So that makes me hopeful.
I would just say, and I know you don't need more praise, but I feel like what you have reminded me of is just that there's cost. There really is cost. And for those of us who aren't paying enough of it, that's part of what this conversation has focused me on today, is that it's not just about slogans and where we are trying to help from our comfortable places. There is now just a higher social public price. There just is to this work. And that's a shanda, if we all know what that means. That's something that none of us should be proud of. But I think giving in to the cost, to me, is the antithesis of hope. And I see so many people who aren't. I think that is literally a gauntlet for all of us, and it gives me great hope, even if I'm not finding that courage quite yet.
I need to take a breath. First, I want to thank all of you. I didn't expect so much tears tonight, but I'm so glad that we brought it to this space, and thank all 5 of you.
Are you about to close?
Yes.
Good. Can I just say one thing?
Of course.
We're going to be all right. We're going to be all right. Don't worry about Trump. I'm serious. Your people have faced worse than Trump. Much worse. 3,000 years of assholes and terrible people. I read in the Bible, and all the people that stood against y'all not even here no more. I'm sure in those days you were scared then. There's a DNA, cultural DNA in the Jewish people, and a cultural DNA in the Black people, and double it in the Black Jews. I'm not leaving nobody out. Not leaving nobody out.
What about everybody else?
But look, everybody got something special, but I just want to brag a little bit on these 2 peoples. In the Jewish world, after all you went through, getting chased out of every country for 3,000 years, having to sleep with go bags packed for generations in case they came in the night. You did something remarkable. Somehow you whispered in the ears of the babies while you're running for your life. Repair the world. Tikkun olam. Repair the world. When we get away from here, baby, repair the world. That is a moral miracle. You didn't say repair the shtetl. Repair the synagogue. You said repair the whole world, baby. Even these people that are chasing us, repair the whole world. That's a moral miracle. It's a moral miracle. And then look at us. We didn't have 3,000 years. We had 300. And no matter what they did to us, hallelujah anyhow. Hallelujah anyhow. And when we get out of this slavery, when we get out of this segregation, justice for all. Dr. King didn't say justice for Black children. He said justice for the slave master's children too. Beaten for 300 years, raped for 300 years, castrated, humiliated 300 years. The first time we get a chance to speak, I have a dream for you and me and our children. a moral miracle. Two peoples in this country, both representing moral miracles. The cultural DNA of Repair the World, the cultural DNA of Justice for All, you put it together, you have a double helix for hope for all humanity. And the whole world's been blessed by it. So we're going to be all right. They didn't stop your mother. They didn't stop your father. They didn't stop your grandmother. They didn't stop your grandfather. They didn't stop none of them. Not going to stop us either. Thank you.
I'm trying not to cry now. I want to thank all of you for this amazing, emotional, urgent, and necessary conversation. Can we please give another round of applause for our panelists? And I want to end where the rabbi began, with what's at stake, and the image of Rabbi Heschel and Dr. King marching together, and how that has become shorthand for Black-Jewish solidarity. But if we're honest, that alliance was fracturing even as they walked. The Six-Day War created fault lines in 1967. Ocean Hill, Brownsville split the coalition in 1968. The alliance was never uncomplicated. What made it powerful wasn't the absence of conflict. It was this decision to stay in the work despite the conflict. We can't recreate 1965, and we shouldn't try. The question is whether we can build something that's honest about where we are now. An alliance that doesn't ask anyone to choose between parts of their identity or their principles, that acknowledges how power works in America and who has it, that centers the voices that have been pushed to the margins in both communities. I believe we can and we shall continue to build this alliance. But I also know what happens if we don't try. We get more fracture, more isolation, more college students who've never had a meaningful conversation with someone from another community, more ceding of moral authority to people who profit from division. So here's what I'm asking. Don't let tonight be the last conversation. Talk to someone who disagrees with you, not to win, but to understand. Show up to something that makes you uncomfortable. Read books written by writers not from your community. Question your own certainties. Stay when it gets hard. The work of this alliance isn't happening in conference rooms. It happens in choices. The choice to listen instead of defend. The choice to ask, what am I not seeing, instead of who's wrong here. The choice to stay in relationships even when it costs you something. That work starts tonight with all of us. And I want to thank all of you for being here with us and for joining us during this amazing and emotional conversation. I want to pass it to Janille, who's going to talk about our after talk, and thank you again to all five of you.
Yeah. So I know it's late, guys, but I think what you witnessed just now is what can happen through conversation when we stick in or when we stay in on the discomfort and work through the tension with each other. So we don't want to just send you off tonight. We want to give you an opportunity to process what you heard, to think about what's the next step for you to take this into your lives, into your communities, and how you can kind of unpack the tension that we're all feeling. So we have and conversation. Is that no? And conversation to provide a space for us to be able to do just that, to do that work of digging deep with someone that you may not have come with or have had the opportunity to have these kind of conversations with. So please stay. I know people are going to want to talk to Van or maybe want to talk to me or anybody else actually up here. But the beauty and the change really happens as we speak to each other. And I know there may only be 15 Black people in the room tonight, but the shift happens as you speak to each other as well. So please stay after for just a little while. Well, not just a little while, but until the conversation is over, until we processed it appropriately. We are going to have drinks available that you can indulge in, and wonderful people and conversation to dig deep before leaving.
Thank you. Thank you. Please give us a round of applause.